anyways, actually, I do want to honor Kevin. He does a lot to make sure that these presentations happen. You know, he does a lot of the administrative footwork. And so, anyways, thank you, Kevin, for all that you do. So we're very excited. We had a good night last night. We have a couple of repeats here. That's awesome over there. And a few other repeats here. And I'm going to make sure Olo keeps you, keep you from, If you had a long day, he was a little drowsy last night. So anyway, we did biological proofs of evolution fail last night. The evidence cries out design. Feel free to ask some questions about that tonight if you missed it. And tonight we're going, what do fossils say about evolution? Nothing. Rocks don't talk. I personally have never had a rock talk to me. I've talked to a few rocks that I've dropped on my feet, but other than that. So anyways, this is being sponsored by Maranatha Christian Fellowship. My name is Jonathan. I'm a campus pastor here at MSU. Been so for probably longer than several of you in this room in terms of your age, 35 years. So anyways, but we've been on this campus for about 28 years, and we've got a church here for the last 16. So anyways, and so we want to make sure tonight that you also stop by our little brochure table here before you leave. You can sign up for our events over here that we do. We do we do this presentation usually every year. We'll have this epic fail. We do a lot of other activities, like we've got a Nepalese dinner coming up on November 2nd. So an authentic Nepalese dinner. One of their favorite foods is momo, and that's what we're going to be having Priyansu's from Nepal over here. And so we got that coming up. We got a Thanksgiving dinner coming up. We got our regular worship meetings on campus. So we keep you updated on those with those emails. And if you want to get Dave and Mary Jo Nutting from the Alpha Omega Institute, you want to get their newsletter, you can sign up for it here. It's a bi-monthly, so it's every other month, so you're not getting slammed every month in the mailbox. So we're excited to hear Dave and Mary Jo again tonight, and of course a different topic here, as we just mentioned. They've been doing these types of presentations for about 40 years, and again, like I said, what's that?
We're not that old.
No. Well, they've been married for 53 years. They kind of look alike, don't you think so? That's what they say happens as you get older, so that's, I got that to look forward to with my wife. So they've been doing these they're on their 40th anniversary this year, of doing these types of presentations, but prior to that, they were evolutionists, and they were fully trained in evolution, and they taught at the high school and college level. So they say they evolved from evolutionists into creationists, and so it was a process. They can share more about that with you guys. And so anyways, and they have 2 sons, and one is married, and they have 2 grandkids. Amen. And one of their grandkids has already written a book at 13, was it? 14?
14, yeah.
14.
And published it.
And published.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I'm just trying to, who knows what. Anyway, so we do these presentations because we believe that what you believe about origins and how life began is going to have a great impact on your life and how you live and what you do with your life. And so we believe it's very important. We don't believe in accidents. We believe that everyone is fearfully and wonderfully made in the image of God. Obviously, I'm a preacher. I'm not a scientist in that sense, but I do believe that every one of you in this room have a destiny, a call from God on your life, and that you're not an accident. And the Bible says that the God of this age has blinded the minds of the unbelieving. And I was blinded at one time. I didn't know Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior. I was not following Christ. I was not living in the truth. I was deceived. And one day those blinders came down. And I got born of the Spirit, and Jesus Christ became my Lord and Savior. And that completely changed my worldview. And so I have a biblical worldview now. Hey, Sam. And every one of us in this room has a worldview. It might be a New Age, postmodernist, communist, secular humanist, Islamic. There's at least 6 major worldviews taught in Western culture. And that's how you view life, based on your worldview. Most Americans have a mixture of worldviews. They have different beliefs beliefs taken from all the different worldviews. My goal is to have a consistent biblical worldview. And one of the things that I've been accused of in the years past is of being brainwashed. And because I actually believe in the Bible literally, and if it doesn't make sense literally, then we look at it symbolically or metaphorically. But anyways, my answer to that is very simple. We're all brainwashed. Somebody's ideas are washing our brains. The only question is, whose ideas? I'm just letting Jesus wash my brain. So anyways, just want you to, we got to get over the bumper sticker mentality, okay? We got to be thinkers here and be critical thinkers. And I think if you will critically think here tonight and try to be objective, even if we all have a bias. We all have assumptions about life and where it came from. But if we can critically think and, wherever the truth is coming from, if it's truth, it's truth. I'm just going to, sometimes I have to eat my humble pie and say that's true, you see, even though I might not like it. So anyway, so I'm really excited for Dave and Mary Jo to present this lecture tonight. I like the fossils talk. I think it's really a very unique talk, and obviously it was a great impact in your transformation of going from evolutionists to creationists.
Yeah,
so
it was.
anyway, so we're going to have, how this will work is they're going to probably talk for about an hour. I try to keep them in that 60 minutes. And then you can ask them questions after they speak. We'll have a Q&A time where you can ask them questions. And so just save your questions, okay? And that way we can get through the talk, and then we can have a wonderful discussion about whatever it is that's on your mind regarding origins. And you can even ask salvation questions too if you want. So, but anyway, so with no further speaking on my part, let's give these guys a warm welcome and turn it over to Mary Jo and Dave.
Well, Dave's going to be doing most of the talk tonight on fossils because he's a geologist and he knows more about fossils than I do. And he grew up in western Colorado looking for fossils, especially dinosaur fossils. And you'll hear a little bit more about that from him. I actually grew up here in Mankato, went to the public school system here, was thoroughly taught the idea of evolution. And even though I went to church, I didn't know what to do with evolution. I thought maybe the Bible was a religious explanation and evolution was the scientific explanation for the origin of life and the development of everything. I didn't realize really, but I was in a big conflict situation. In high school, what I did was I drew a line down the middle. So I put what I thought was religion on one side and what I thought was science on the other side. They never met. Then I went to college. I went to a church college. And they said, oh, well, God must have used evolution as his method of creating. And that book of Genesis is a myth, and it was written for primitive people who couldn't understand the science of evolution. At the church college, they taught evolution the same way it would be taught anywhere in any secular university. Biology class, we used a regular secular biology book. And so I came out thinking, okay, evolution is science, maybe God did something with it, but if you go to school here, they don't say God did it, they just tell you it all happened by accidents and chance. And after that church college, I came here for a year of education, and unfortunately, kind of a wasted year of education. I spent a lot of time in this student union playing cards and messing around instead of studying, which I think was a waste of time now when I look back on it. But anyway, from there, I ended up going to Colorado State University. I got a degree in biology. That's where I met Dave. I wanted to go to the mountains. I met a mountain man, so we stayed in Colorado. And we did a lot of backpacking. Loved it in Colorado. I absolutely adored going backpacking and camping and whatever. After we graduated, we went down to New Mexico. We taught in a public high school, and I taught biology. What could I teach about evolution and creation? I didn't know anything about creation except what the Bible said. So in the science classes at school, I taught evolution right out of the book. I didn't know there was another side to the story. And then we got invited to go and teach in Alaska at a little college up there. And while we were there, we had our world kind of shaken. Because one day I was shopping in a little second-hand store and I found a book called Evolution, The Fossils Say No. I bought the book for 5 cents. You ever made a 5-cent purchase that really kind of spun your life around?
Used to get you a lot of candy when you were
Used
younger.
to, didn't it? Yeah, penny candy back in those days. And anyway, so I bought the book for a nickel. I thought the fossils were the very best evidence of evolution. They're the only hard facts we have, aren't they? You know, we looked at things last night like natural selection and mutation, and we looked at things like the peppered moths and a variety of other kinds of evidences of evolution. But really, the fossils are the only hard facts we have. And so I thought fossils proved evolution. I read that book and I went, wait a minute. This guy's either crazy or he knows something I don't know. And I gave the book to Dave then, with his background in paleontology and geology. And he read that book and his conclusion was the same. This guy's either nuts or he knows something we haven't heard before. Let's start doing some more research. And you know, you really don't learn until you get out of college. I hate to tell you that, but it's really true. Once you get out of school, you can start studying what you want to study, right? And you can start digging in on things. And so we started studying anything we could get our hands on that gave us a different view of this whole issue, first with fossils and then later on with other evidences of evolution. And like Jonathan said, over a period of time, we evolved from evolutionists to creationists. Didn't happen overnight, but it also didn't take millions of years. You know?
Praise God for that.
Now it took us a lot longer to come to grips with the issues of, well, how did these fossils get buried, and what were the processes, and how long did it take, and so on. But that took longer for us to come to grips with. But as we looked at it, you know, we could have just tossed that information in that book and just said, this guy's nuts. And we would probably still be, well, we'd be retired by now, probably, and have a pension, hopefully. But we didn't do that. We decided we would really dig into it and look into it. So I want to encourage you tonight. Some of this may seem strange to you. It may not fit in the accepted paradigm. It may go against what you've been taught in your classes here and in the museums and the media and the zoos and everywhere else. But we would encourage you, keep an open mind and just look at it. It's not going to hurt you to look at it, you know? And we're not threatened. If you have questions, we're happy to answer questions later on. So be sure to write down, jot down your question or keep it in mind, and we can type those later, okay? And so Dave is going to be talking tonight about the worldview of a creationist worldview versus a naturalistic, materialistic worldview of evolution as an explanation, but specifically tonight looking at the fossil evidence. I think you'll find it fascinating. Basically what we're going to be looking at is, how were these fossils formed? Do they take a long time to form, or are they formed quickly? Are they in that simple to complex pattern that we would need to see for evolution to be true? What about the varying distributions of fossils and so on? What about things that are living, they call today living fossils, things that we have in the fossil record and in the living world, but they haven't changed over supposedly millions of years of time. What do we do with those? And then he'll be looking specifically at some of the kinds of fossils that people like to use as real proofs of evolution. So we're going to get right into the program.
All right.
I'll let you
Okay.
take over.
Well, I'm glad to be here with you, that's for sure. Anyhow, to meet so many of you, and I feel like it's great to be able to talk with you and just share with you different things, and you get to be friends with many of you. Hi. And anyhow, but most of us actually are taught in school and movies and TV, museums, etc., that the idea of evolution and the fossil record takes a huge bite out of the Bible. You can't trust the Bible, you hear all the time, don't you? And anyhow, I probably would have been in that same camp. You might say I grew up thinking that evolution was true, but I always thought there was God too. So I put the two together, okay? And I call that theistic evolution, or that's what it's called. And then later I found out that evolution didn't even work scientifically. So I had to give up that idea. And why would I pin it on God? It's a wasteful, ugly way of making life. But anyhow, this is a picture of me clear back when I was still handsome, okay? But that was way back when, and I was teaching on a television program in about the 5th grade how the study of rocks and fossils and dinosaurs proved evolution. And I could do that because that's all I had ever been taught at that age, okay? I thought evolution was a fact all the way through my training through college, in fact. I thought evolution was a fact. And so why could I teach it? Because that's all I was ever taught. Okay, that's it. And that's what happens to so many people. If that's all you hear, of course you believe it, okay? And back at that age, I used to hunt a lot of rocks, look for rocks. One of our biggest things that we like to look for were dinosaur bones. And by the time I was 13, I already discovered the skeletal remains of 2 different dinosaurs, both a Stegosaurus and an Allosaurus, okay? I was well on my way to my goal of being Dinosaur Dave. Okay, there I was. And I found out though that you can't dig out these fossils and these dinosaur bones with a bulldozer. And I didn't like the tedious way of doing things, and so I didn't have the patience for it. And so all my training when I was thinking of going to be a paleontologist specializing there, I decided that I'd go to my other great love at that point was mathematics. And so I ended up with both degrees in geology and in mathematics. So anyhow, what do when all you're taught is evolution and you think you want to believe the Bible? Well, it turns out you do the research. I didn't realize that until Mary Jo found that little tiny book for 5 cents, okay? And then I said, well, I gotta do my own research. I can't just accept everything that's been taught to me all of these years. What is truth? Do your own research. And that's what I had to do back then. When I did, I found out that evolution is not really science. Now, I don't have a podium to hide behind here. When I say evolution is not science, people get a little upset with that. But no, it's not. It's a philosophy that is posing as science. That's what I found out. And it's a pillar of the naturalistic worldview, which means everything in the universe, including yourself, can be explained by only natural processes without a God. And that's what's being taught around the world mostly. Okay, is the idea of naturalism. And I bought into it. I thought, oh yeah, lightning zapping through the atmosphere can make these chemicals can line up like bees on a string, make proteins and 1,000 other things. All together makes a cell. Okay? It sounded simple to me until I started studying it closely. Of course, that cell over more millions and millions of years eventually became you. All right? And so I bought that idea for a long time, but found out there's some major problems with it. All right, so keep that in mind. That's what naturalism, if you hear me referring to it. Big Bang is a way to explain the universe without God, origin of life without God, or the origin of mankind without God. That's strictly naturalism, okay? That you don't allow God a foot in the door, and students are chained to that idea and said, don't think out of the box, okay? If you want to be a good scientist, you might hear, you've got to believe in naturalism. You've got to believe in evolution, all this kind of stuff. I found out that isn't true. You can be a really good scientist and still believe that God created everything, okay? Well, somebody in a box. Dr. Scott Todd, in fact, he said, even if all the data point to an intelligent designer, such an hypothesis is excluded from science because it is not naturalistic. Got that? So, you have to think out of the box, out of his box, in order to understand there might be something wrong with naturalism. Tonight, you don't have to be chained to it. Thinking is allowed, just like last night. Last night we looked at amazing evidence of design, didn't we? And some of the major proofs for evolution found out there's some big problems with that. And when you look at the evidence of design, you say, it looks like there's a God. Can you go there if that's where the evidence is leading? According to Scott Todd, no, you can't go there. I say you can, okay? I give you permission tonight to do that. You know, Darwin published his book clear back in 1859. It was called On the Origin of Species, right? How are you going to get it? And basically, was Darwin wrong, though? Was he wrong about the fossils? Well, this is one thing he was right about, the fossil record. Here's why he was right. He said geology assuredly doesn't support his theory. Okay? They don't have the links, but keep digging, you might find it. And when I show the evidence of evolution doesn't work, we don't have the fossils that support it, you know what I hear today? Same thing Darwin thought. Keep digging. You'll find those links if my theory is correct. That's what he would say. Well, let's look at what Darwin on the Origin of Species, he actually said geology assuredly does not reveal any such finely graduated organic claims, and this, or the change there, perhaps is the most obvious and gravest objection which can be urged against my theory. The explanation lies, as I believe, in the extreme imperfection of the geological record. Okay, so keep digging, he says. Well, do you realize we now have over 1 billion fossils in the museums around the world? Those fossils don't support evolution. Okay? And that's the point I'll be making this evening. Here's what Niles Eldridge said, clear back in 1982. 120 years of paleontological research later, it has become abundantly clear that the fossil record will not confirm this part of Darwin's predictions. Nor is the problem a miserably poor record. The fossil record simply shows that his prediction is wrong. Niles Eldridge happens to be an evolutionist, okay? That's it. That's what he says. All right, I'm going to give you 3 good reasons tonight why the fossil record supports the biblical record. Okay? Creation, the fall, the flood, and offers devastating evidence against Darwinian evolution. Now you know where I'm headed tonight, right? All right. All right, so what would you expect if evolution is true? You'd expect a record in the rock layers of constant change over millions and millions of years, leaving lots and lots of links or in-between form, what Darwin called chains, okay? Links to the chain. And you'll find way down here in the bottom layers, the life would be very, very simple, not complex. So it's complex, leading up to more life should be down here simple, and then as time marches on, you get more and more complex. So something found here should be very simple, right? All right, what do you find? You look right down there in that bottom layer I was just pointing to, you find what? Trilobites, that's complexity. It's going to demonstrate something wherever you find life in the fossil record, complexity is everywhere. It's not simple to complex whatsoever. And if the Bible and the creationist view is true, you'll find out that there's not the type of change that you will see if evolution would be true. Not enough to change. And you'd find distinct kinds. Not one kind changing into another kind, changing into something else. That's what we would look for if the creation model is correct. Well, let's look right down here in the Cambrian, where life supposedly became abundant. What do you find there? Those trilobites, right? When you look at the actual head of a trilobite, what do you see? Very complex eyes. Okay? Very complex eyes. Hundreds of lenses focusing an image to one point. That's complex. There's nothing simple there whatsoever. Okay? Now they found another type of a fossil, and there were thousands of them found in this one layer, clear down in the Cambrian, way down where I was pointing to before. They said it looks like the eye of a recently swatted fly. It's found in the Cambrian. But you know what? They actually even said their discovery reveals that some of the earliest animals possess very powerful vision. Similar eyes are found in many living insects, such as robber flies. And though it looks identical to a robber fly, you know what they said? It can't be. It can't be a robber eye fly. Why? Because according to the theory of evolution, those flies hadn't evolved yet for another couple 100 million years. So it couldn't be that. But it looks identical to it. Anyhow, so here's another one. Cambrian explosion exhibit, Denver Museum. They said, now I added this one word here, okay? They said 545 million evolutionary years ago. There was an explosion of life, and all the different body shapes and plans, get this word they used, popped into existence. That doesn't sound like slow and gradual evolution, does it? Not at all. All of a sudden, it's there. And evolution needs all those millions of years. I believe God is powerful enough to create, he's powerful enough to get the job done. He doesn't need that amount of time, does he? He can get it done in an instant, okay? Now they found a brain in one of these fossils in the Cambrian. Okay, a brain, they were able to take a scan of this particular fossil and find out the brain is identical to the same arthropod living today. Identical pattern. According to evolution, how did brains develop? Remember I used it last night, perhaps, okay? And perhaps basically there was a cell that was became sensitive to others around it. And it's well on its way to become a human brain. Yeah, right, okay? Especially when you realize the complexity of that brain. It's, oh, wait a minute. They said the only way to become fossilized is first get rapidly buried. Okay, how do you bury such a bunch of things in a fossil record quickly? That's a lot of mud in a short period of time. Here's a geological principle. When you see mud, think flood. Close enough? All right, that's probably what I would say. What are we seeing? Complexity everywhere. What about this idea of stasis, not change? Okay, here is a fossil shell. There's the living counterpart. Not much difference there, right? Over all those millions of years? Come on now. Sassafras leaf and a fossil one. Not even the vein structure has changed. No change. What's going on? What's that called? You still recognize it as a pine cone, don't you? All right, you still recognize that, yeah. No change. Here's a type of an insect found in amber, supposedly 140 million years old. We have the same one living today. No change. That's stasis, staying put. Not a lot of change, okay? Got that word, stasis? Not change, okay? Dragonflies are dragonflies, aren't they? Oh, now they found just recently, this was 1 year ago, fossil spider. Guess what it looked like? Spider, okay? They even know the type of spider. in the fossil. So again, not the change you're looking for. They had reflective eyes, just like today's. They were able to ascertain that too. Now they also found a golden orb spider, supposedly 165 million evolutionary years old. It's identical to what we have today. The spider webs have been found. In fact, the spider webs have been found way down further in the fossil record. Now hold on. If spiders hadn't evolved until 150 to 200 million years later, what do you think those spider webs were trying to catch? And if insects weren't around at that time, like the evolutionary theory says, what were those spider webs trying to catch in what's called the Silurian period? So I think there's some issues with the evolution. If you actually study fossil insects, you know what you're studying? Insects that are living today. Okay? That's something to understand that. Here's a Denver museum about sharks. Then here's what it says right here. The first sharks evolved 450 million evolutionary years ago. Sharks have changed very little over the years. Wouldn't you expect some more change? Now they have a living shark. They actually found it still swimming, and they said, wow, this is unchanged from its fossil counterpart, supposedly over 450 million years. Unchanged. Shouldn't you see a little change? Of course you should, right? You should see it. Now they found a fish way down there in that low layer in the Cambrian, okay? They had advanced eyes. It was a vertebrate. Blood vessels they were able to ascertain. Gills, digestive system, and muscular swimming. What do you think it was? Fish. Got it? It was a fish. Sure enough. All right. A coelacanth thought to have been extinct for 65 million years. For years they thought that, until the fishermen off the coast of Madagascar caught some, brought them in. They're unchanged over supposedly 420 million years of evolution. Okay, well, they thought that front fin was actually a proto-leg on its way to becoming a leg. Okay? See that? Anyhow, so does that look like a leg, or does that look pretty fishy? Looks like a fin, doesn't it? That's exactly right. It is an actual. Woodpeckers are woodpeckers when you find them in the fossil records. Did you know that? You do not have to imagine what a feather looks like. Feathers are preserved in fine enough shale and silt deposits. They're preserved, but not here. Well, no, but here is not something you can have to imagine. Now they found over 1,000 fossil bats, but not one intermediate. Not a single one, okay? And here they say there are no known intermediate stages between bats and insectivores. Nothing there. Okay, so anyhow, now they found also hummingbirds. And hummingbirds are always hummingbirds. The amazing thing, according to this quote here, the amazing thing about this fossil is that it's essentially a modern hummingbird. My mind is a little blown, said the reviewer, okay? Then he said this, where the whole hovering tribe of hummingbirds came from remains up in the air. Up in the air. Isn't that something? Okay. I like their humor, okay? That's really good. Tigers have been tigers. Okay, they found them. Lizards have been lizards. No change whatsoever. All right? All right, so that's the idea. Things are staying put, not changing a bunch. What about distinct kinds already here? Here we go. When you look at a textbook, what do you see? This is out of a kid's book, used in the schools, probably 4th or 5th grade, and they show how the amphibian and the tadpoles, etc., are going to eventually change over millions and millions of years and finally turn into a mouse. Okay?
Yeah.
Looks good. What do kids think then when they see a picture like that? They think, oh, they have all of these things, right? So it was not the evidence that convinced them, it's the drawings that the artist has made. That's what convinces people that evolution is true. Many of us were probably taught evolution clear back in elementary school and even preschool because of the pictures we saw in books. Okay? We have to understand that. The missing links, they didn't find any of these things. These missing links are still missing. Or perhaps there never were any. God created salamanders, created mice, okay? That's all right. That's a different worldview, isn't it? Here's what evolutionist David Kitts said, writing in the magazine called Evolution. He says, evolution requires intermediate forms between species. But paleontology, the study of fossils, does not provide them. An enigma for him, huh? Okay, here is Arrow White specializing in fish, another evolutionist. He says, but whatever ideas authorities may have on the subject, the lungfishes. That was your great-great-granddaddy born in evolution, okay? The lungfishes, like every other major group of fishes that I know, have their origins firmly based on, what's this word right here? Nothing. Nothing. Then he said, I have often thought how little I should like to have to prove organic evolution in a court of law. All right. Stephen Jay Gould, while he was still living, said it this way. The extreme rarity of transitions or chains or links in the fossil record persists as the trade secret. It's the trade secret of evolution of paleontology, okay? Don't tell anybody, right? All right, so what are we seeing? Constant change? No. Lots of links? No. Lowest life simple? No. Every one of the predictions that evolution would make are wrong. They don't. But what do we see? We see the fossils and the living world indicate that animals were created after their own kind. Of course, they have room for variation, don't they? We have big dogs, little dogs, etc., but that's only genetic changes, isn't it? We have the same thing with horses and frog kind. Again, nothing but Mendelian type of genetics going on right there, okay? And that's what Genesis 1 says. 10 different times. God created things after their own kind, not one kind changing into another kind. That's a biblical record, huh? All right, so everything we've been seeing, the complexity everywhere, yeah, that fits the creation model. Things staying put, wow, not changed. That fits creation, and the distinct kinds fits the biblical model, doesn't it? All the way across. You say, wait a minute. I've seen a lot of pictures of textbooks showing evolution. And I'll say you're right. You've seen pictures. You've seen great artwork, okay? And that's what we have to understand. We're looking at great artwork, not necessarily the actual evidence, all right? Let's look at the horse series. Supposedly one of the best evidences for evolution. But look at the picture in this 6th grade book here. All right, look at the picture here. You notice a little horse called Eohippus? A lot of spots. Oh, look at this. Fewer spots, no spots. What do you know about spots from a fossil? Nothing. What this does is just lead a young mind into believing in change over millions of years that gets them interested and into evolution, doesn't it? And so it's basically a very slow way of getting them to think that way. There are many things wrong with this horse series as presented in textbook. You know some of those, don't you, Jonathan? Like, for instance, the foot structure. How do you go from this type of foot structure to this type of foot structure? They don't have the evidence there. How do you go from a browsing tooth to a grazing tooth, leaving no transitions? The number of ribs go back and forth between these various fossils. And you would expect to find the bones of present-day horse in rock layers up on top, right? But his ancestors way down below in the column. That's not the way it is. In several places now they have found the bones of modern-day horse in rock layers below his supposed ancestors. Okay? You can't be your own granddad, can you? So there's a problem with that, okay? And by the way, this little guy here called Eohippus is actually Hyracotherium. That's a scientific name. We have living Hyraxes today, right there. It's about the size of a rabbit. I don't think you want to put a saddle on that beast to try to take it very far, would you? No. Okay? Here's another textbook picture. It shows how the lobe-finned fish supposedly crawls out of the ocean on these proto-legs, right? That's an evolutionary loaded term. Proto, that means it's on its way to becoming. You have no clue about that. But on the proto-leg, and then changes into the amphibians, and later it becomes you. Okay? That's what I'm trying to teach us here. Wait a minute. When you see a picture like this in a book, I always get the young people to ask a question. And what do you think that question is? For those who've heard me speak before. Go ahead. Evangeline, you know.
Great artwork, what's the evidence?
She's got it. Great artwork. What's the evidence here? What's the evidence for the transition? Anybody could draw pictures. And so what is the evidence for that? Turns out nothing. At the time that book was written, they had nothing for evidence. They just stated that. And that became a fact for some people reading it. And then the textbook on top of this picture actually said transitional forms or missing links show how the process of evolution took place. Your college students, is there something wrong with that statement?
They're missing.
Or professors, some of you?
They're
What's wrong with that statement? Yeah. How can something missing show anything? Correct? They don't have those links. All right. So, anyhow, well, actually, they came up with about 6 or 7 different supposed transitions between the fish and the amphibians. Everyone fizzled. Everyone has. The latest was Tiktaalik. It was found up clear north of Canada, and they said, aha, here's what he looked like. Remember, that's great artwork, right? But they show you what they actually found in the fossil at this point. And that was actually used in a debate against Ken Ham, who was the creationist against Bill Nye, the science guy. All right? It was in a debate. But Bill Nye, the science guy, should have known better. Before he ever used this for evidence against creation, they already proved it wrong. And the reason they proved it wrong, because in Poland, in a layer below where Tiktaalik was found, they actually found a 4-footed trackway of animals coming across, crisscrossing. So they had 4-footed animals before this guy evolved 4 legs. Okay? And so that's a problem. I like what Jennifer Clack at the University of Cambridge said. We thought we pinned down the origin of living tetrapods, but we have to rethink the whole thing. Okay? There's another one that bit the dust, okay? Oh, here's a 4th grade unit lesson. Now what I want to ask you this, what years of grades is evolution taught? 4th grade. Or lower, okay? Or even lower. I was actually taught evolution, you know where it started? 1st grade. Why? Because I picked up all these dinosaur books. And all I got was evolution, didn't I? All right, but here they say, here's the evolution of a whale. You've got Cyanix, you've got Pakicetus. Oh, okay, you've got Ambulocetus and Rhodocetus. Oh, and then some real whales, okay? So that's the evolution, that's how it works. And what would they say? We could imagine that a hippopotamus eventually could become a whale. Although they were not teaching that in that drawing, that's one of their suspected relatives that's leading up to whale at first. But they kind of have gone away from that. This is from Berkeley EDU, and it's actually showing the hippopotamus up here, and they're saying, no, this isn't the link. It's on one of the branches, but it's not a link. And look what they says about all of these supposed links that I just showed you, where they're showing a nice gradual chain leading to whales from land animals. He says the hippos are the closest living relatives of whales, but they are not the ancestors of whales. In fact, none of the individual animals on the evogram is the direct ancestor of any other, as far as we know. That's why each of them gets its own branch on the family tree. So what do you see? This is true when you look at so many different things in the fossil record. You see this nice tree of life, but it's like everything is truncated. What does that mean? There's no known ancestors for any of them. Okay, that's what they're saying here. They're just different branches, but they're not descended from each other. All right, well, that's good to know. Well, let's figure out what this fourth grade unit lesson is teaching kids, though. It says that a creature like this eventually turns into this whale, and it'll actually show slow, gradual, changes, adaptations will eventually make this creature turn into that. Okay, let me ask you that. Okay, what's the youngest one in here right now? Well, no. We'll ask you. Yeah. Does that look very logical? No, she says. No, it doesn't. Yeah, we notice it doesn't look logical. But they say, well, this is how it worked. All right, so, let's go back here. Now we have another creature that's one of these guys. Here's another one, supposed evolution. And they say, aha, here's what the ancestor of whales look like. Pretty much the same one we saw before. And what was the evidence for it? This entire animal that they put in the museum, they put in the textbook, was reconstructed only from a couple of pieces of jaw and a few teeth. Period. Nothing else. Now, is that enough evidence to get that great artwork? All right. But usually people don't ask what's the evidence, do they? They should. They really should. Here's Pakicetus. This is on the front cover of Science magazine in 1983. All right. It's on the front cover. What's the evidence? Isn't that what you would ask? Great artwork. What's the evidence for that? Turns out all they had were one piece of bone at the back of the skull, a couple of teeth, one piece of jaw. They found at that point no backbone, no tail, no legs. So how do they get this then? How do they get this? Bones prove a whale walked. How can something without any legs prove anything walked? You see the problem here? All right, we just have to understand that. That is a big problem. Now they found more bones for what they called Pakicetus, and instead of this creature, here's what they think he looked like. And so this is the new ancestor for whales, but it's the same one, Pakicetus. My question is this: which is the correct model? The 1983 model or the 2004 model? And is it really ancestor to whales? I'm going to say no, it isn't. Okay, we're going to go up down one more on that length of shade. Ambulocetus. Oh, wow, look at that great artwork, right? Here's what he looked like, I'm sure. What do you say? Great artwork. And say, what's the evidence for that? Well, you got the whole skeleton. What do you mean, what's the evidence? That's in the museum where the guy actually worked who found this thing and did the work on it. They got the whole skeleton. No, they didn't, okay? They didn't at all for Ambulocetus. All right, so what do you see here? You see that nice skull that was originally taken, that bite out of the Bible from one of my earlier slides? This is what they sold from that museum to museums all over the country. What did everybody who saw this think? They found the whole skull, correct? Very important is the blowhole right here. That would identify it more toward a whale area and some other features as well. But they didn't find the whole skull, by the way. In fact, this is a videotape of what Hans Fleissen, working with Gingerish, actually had found, and here it is. Notice the two colors. You've got the darker color. This is stuff they found. All this gray and silver stuff is added. They never found it. Did you notice the piece where the blowhole should be is missing? Okay? Only one tooth found, the rest of it added. Okay? And all of the neck bones gone. All this gone. Some few rib bones. But Dr. Hans Fleissen admits that the fossil Ambulocetus do not include the part of the skull with a blowhole. That's the identifier, okay? The big identifier didn't work. So what do you ever actually find instead of what the museum shows? All you find is the parts right here that you see in this picture, except for these, the red ones. Why did they put them in there? Well, they're found in the same locality, but 45 feet higher in the fossil record. Okay? That, they're saying it belongs to the same animal? No way, okay? It just doesn't work. But anyhow, notice part of the skull is missing that they needed. Bummer, isn't it? Okay, bummer. Okay, next one, Rhodocetus. They claim this is the first land creature with legs changing into flippers and a tail developing in the whale's tail, the fluke of the whale. That's the claim. That's what Gingerish would say as well. This is the first creature. And so that's Rhodocetus. Okay, does that look like a good candidate? Maybe. Most people won't be able to tell. But now, what did they find? Oh, hold on. It says legs changing into flippers. You know what they didn't find? The flippers. What else did they find? Into a whale's tail. Tail developing into a whale's tail. What didn't they find here? All they found was this part of the skeleton. No tail. You understand? They don't have it. Okay, now let me show you here. So here's an interview from Dr. Carl Werner with Dr. Gingerish, asking him what he found, what he didn't find. Dr. Carl Werner said, I noted that there are missing tail bones. How do you know it had a whale-like fluke? As Gingerish was telling everybody. Dr. Gingerish says, I speculated that it might have had a fluke. Speculated? Sold it in a museum as a skeleton? Mm-hmm. Then he says, I now doubt that Rhodocetus would have had a fluked tail based on other evidence. Okay, now what about the flippers? Here it is. Missing flipper bones, Dr. Werner asked him. These were legs turning into whale flippers, Dr. Gingerish. Since then, since he had it in his museum, and still does, by the way, since then we have found the forelimbs, the hands, and the front arms of Rhodocetus. And we understand that it doesn't have the kind of arms that can spread like flippers on a whale. So, all of these identifying features as a missing link, what happens? Out the window. Okay? Forget that one. Now what do they think Rhodocetus was? A land animal. A land animal, carried out to sea someplace and buried. Okay, Dr. Carl Werner went further. He studied the very features of supposedly whale-like characteristic that ginger wrecks reported as whale features. He said when he studied this, he found all 8 are disturbingly non-whale features. I'm not going to stand up here and say that Gingerish was lying to people, okay? I think he was just over-extrapolating what he found, okay? It's easy to do that. But the problem is, the public has taken down the tubes with it, okay? Now notice a red circle here. See these little tiny bones? Sometimes they have another one little bit bigger bone. There they are. All right, they always said what these are leftover back legs from a land animal. These are leftover back legs that now are no longer needed because we have the tail of a whale. Okay, we don't need the back legs. Okay, that's what they're saying. These are leftover, vestigial. Mary Jo talked about vestigial organs last night, didn't she? And she said that the vestigial organs, there are 180 of them, that they said was in the human body. What did they find out? None of them were vestigial. They all had a purpose, okay? Now, what's the purpose there? Well, here it is. In 2014, there was an article of the University of Southern California news release. It's not a creationist group, by the way, okay? And they turned a long-accepted evolutionary assumption on its head. What were those bones? It's a mammal. It's going to give birth to live young. It has to have something for the muscles to attach to push the young babe whale out. Okay? So that's what that was all about. All right, so basically that was it. Okay, how many have heard that dinosaurs evolved into birds? Okay, yeah, almost all our museums are teaching that too now. And this is on the National Geographic right here, and they show you that. Then you look at the pages inside there, they show you the fossil, and they show you what he looked like. Turns out, guess what? They called it a missing link, although there was another article that finally appeared and said it was fraudulent. Somebody put together several fossils in order to sell it to a museum, and then they came up with this particular picture right there. All right, that's what happened. So it was a fraud coming out of the province of China, by the way. But before that time even, Storrs Olson from the National Museum of Natural History, he was a bird expert. He accused National Geographic of engaging in sensationalistic, unsubstantiated, tabloid journalism. Then he said he clearly wrote, the magazine is not receiving competent consultation in certain scientific matters. He said he's especially maddened or galled by the scientists' assertion that a wide variety of dinosaurs definitely wore feathers. This is just a lie, he says. There is not one undisputed example of a dinosaur with feathers. None. The public deserves to know this. All right, so, Alan Fiducia, another bird and fossil expert, said it this way. When they put that feathered dinosaur on the cover last year, there it is right there, listen to what he says. I threw 30 years worth of magazines out of my house. He said National Geographic's journalism is a joke. The hair-like filaments that accompany some fossils come from beneath the skin. I can duplicate the effect by skinning the tail of a modern lizard. All right? He's ticked, isn't he? All right, then later, another one, Dr. Kevin Padian, pushing bird evolution from dinosaurs. Said it, basically he got a fossil, it turned out to be a forgery. That one fell out of the sky. Others have fallen out of the sky yet. But wait a minute, look at the picture. This is National Geographic, okay? This is the National Geographic, and they're showing how eventually a leg is going to evolve into a wing. It's great artwork. Oh, but this time they're giving names to these things. But when you look at it, they've added an awful lot of artwork to every one of those pictures. And then they showed, here's the little dinosaur eventually evolving into a bird. That's what they're showing. The problem is, they never found it in this order. At our office, we tore it apart, and here's what they actually found. Sure enough, true birds, you might say, in the top layers, or where we're standing today, or outside under a tree, okay? But wait a minute, hold on, what's this? A true bird. Way down here, below these guys. Oh, wait a minute, that one was called a Mesozoic kiwi. And another true bird here and here. So you have true birds before the dinosaur that's going to evolve into birds. Again, you can't be your own grandmother, can you? So there's an issue there, okay? There's a big issue, a big problem for evolution here. But what is Kevin Padian? He's pushing the dinosaur to bird evolution. He said, no problem. It says Kevin Padian, the University of California at Berkeley. We don't always get everything in the fossil record in perfect order. Guess what? There is a problem. Okay? They have to admit it. There is a problem. And by the way, how would you imagine a dinosaur turning into a hummingbird? Evolving into a bird, right? Hummingbirds are quite sophisticated too. And a dinosaur doing that? You might say, what about Archaeopteryx? But they find out it flies like a true bird. Many researchers have actually said it is actually a true bird, very similar to the South American Hoatzin, okay? Very similar to it. All right, now, that's that. So a big question, did dinosaurs evolve into birds? I'm gonna say no, and the reason for it, PLOS One 2012 reported finding one of these dinosaurs that's supposedly evolving into dinosaurs, but this one had 3 birds in its stomach. They're not evolving into birds, they're eating them. Okay? So they're living at the same time. And so, anyhow, so much for that. Did you know this? Fossils of modern birds. What kind of birds? Okay, sandpipers, loons, ducks, flamingos, all these birds. And some mammals. Where are they found? In dinosaur rock layers. In dinosaur rock layers. You look at the geologic column. Where are the dinosaurs supposed to be? Way down here. Where are all the rest of these creatures supposed to be? Way up here. In the rock layer. But they're all found together. That doesn't work for evolution, does it? It sure doesn't. All right, here's another problem. They've now found soft tissue in a lot of various fossils. In fact, in this case, here's dinosaur bone red blood cells. They found red blood cells, soft, pliable tissues, etc. And Schweitzer actually wanted to get her data published. She was a graduate student under Jack Horner, the paleontologist. She was working on the thin sections. And he said, Jack, come over here. What do you see here? Looking at a microscope slides, and he's poking at it with the forceps. And he's poking, it's wiggling. And this is supposed to be 140 million years old. You know what Jack Horner told her? I don't know what I'm looking at. But what it really looks like is soft tissue. And then he said this, those creationists are going to love you. Why? Because it's so obvious you can't preserve this stuff over those millions and millions of years. Thousands maybe, not millions of years, okay? So she tried to get her data published. She said, I had one reviewer tell me that he didn't care what the data said. He knew what I was finding wasn't possible. That's what worldview does to you, right? It makes you screen out possible good evidence. I wrote back and said, well, what data would convince you? And he said, none. Okay. All right. So even Schweitzer herself looked at other possibilities. How can we get the various things? I had a professor there at University of Minnesota who mentioned soft tissue. And he stood up and said, it's just biofilm. No, it's now well established it's soft tissues in these fossils. Okay? No, that was wrong. Oh, wait a minute, Schweitzer even tried doing some work about hemoglobin and iron to be able to preserve the soft tissue. And sure enough, she was able to preserve some soft tissue for 2 years. But wait a minute. Some of that is found in supposedly bone that is 180 million years. And iron is not present with many fossils. Well, that was the key ingredient, okay? And according to the research she was doing, you had to keep this totally dry, but you have to bury it very rapidly. And almost all of these fossils are found in what are called river deposits or water deposits, okay? They're not dry, okay? Anyhow, now they've actually found so many other fossils, like this one, supposedly over 500 million evolutionary years old. Okay, that's in 2019, okay? Wow, it has soft tissue as well. There's a list, this is just a partial list of some of the soft tissue they've now found in fossils that shouldn't be there, but it is very prevalent. They have found dinosaur skin that's still pliable, supposedly over 70 million years. Pliable skin makes you think maybe those millions of years never existed. That's what I would start thinking. Okay? So did people see dinosaurs? I say, yeah. Marco, this is real interesting. This is a section that I like to do. It's the idea that people saw dinosaurs, actually. They called them dragons. Now you go to the Asia, and they have no problem with people having seen dragons and things like that. All right? But we realize that, wait a minute, Marco Polo visited China in 1271 AD, and he reported that the emperor raised dragons to pull his chariots in parades. What were they? Were they the same thing as dinosaurs? This is on a rock wall in Natural Bridges National Park near Blanding, Utah. I take students there most of the time. And this is lightened so you can see what it actually looked like. But what is that thing? Type of long-necked dinosaur. Let's call it that, okay? And it's on the sandstone wall. What do you think those people were seeing back then? And drawing a picture of. They're supposedly over 1,000 years old. Again, over 1,000 years old. Havasu Canyon in Arizona. This is a dinosaur we know from the fossil record. And that particular dinosaur is a type of hadrosaur. And, spitting image for it, isn't it? Pretty good. This is out of an Asian collection at 1400 AD. It's a clay figurine, but it looks exactly like Oviraptor. That type of dinosaur. It had the same three-toed pattern, etc. Amazon River Basin. These guys are hunting something. What is this they're hunting? A long-necked dinosaur. I know it's light, but it's there, okay? It's there. You can actually see it. They're hunting that thing. These guys are hunting Corythosaurus maybe, or it's maybe it's a Big Bird from Sesame Street. Okay, something like that. But they're hunting it. Ancient Sumatra. This is out of China, and what do you find out? Wait a minute. These are sauropod dinosaurs on the vessel, isn't it? So what does that tell you? They were actually seeing something like that. This is again a Mesopotamian cylinder, dated even before Christ. What are they showing? Long-necked dinosaurs that look just like that one we have in the museums today. Right? Here is a patent that she was looking at what? What hold it? These are animals we know. What's that guy right there? Stegosaurus. This is on a temple in Cambodia, supposedly 1,000 years old. And I believe they're looking at a Stegosaurus, okay? That's what it looks like. All right, down in Mexico, you got all kinds of clay figurines. Some things are pteranodons, people fighting them. This guy's not doing too well, is he? Not very well at all. No. Bishop Bell's tomb in 1496. There's a brass engraving all the way around his tomb. What are those things? Long-necked dinosaurs, right? 1496, all right? And the dinosaur would look something like that one right there. All right, here's one, Dracorex. They found the skull and the other bones of a creature. And what did Avian Myers, I think was her name, okay, from Stanford University. She was a dinosaur fossil or dinosaur historian. She says dinosaurs and dragons. Called a Dracorex. Why? Because it looks just like Dracorex. Remember Harry Potter? Oh, yeah, it looks like it. But anyhow, here's what they said in their publication at Stanford University. Dinosaurs and dragons? Oh my. Stanford fossil historian links dinosaur bones to mythological creatures. Why would they say it's mythological? Because they don't believe it's true, right? They couldn't possibly believe that even a dragon is real. But maybe dinosaurs and dragons are the same thing. It's a possibility. There's Dracorex right there. And here's what she said about it. She said, Adrian Mayer said it this way. The skull looks strangely familiar to anyone who has studied dragons. Dracorex has a remarkable resemblance to the dragons of ancient China and medieval Europe. All right? What does it look like? Woo. Now keep in mind, these aren't just the horns. These are the snubbins of the horn. The horn is a lot bigger, isn't it? Okay, this is the center part of it. But the horn would be bigger than that, okay? St. George in 275 AD, he got his fame killing dragons. Every one of the plates of him killing a dragon, there's about 4 or 5 of them, look like dinosaur creatures. They look like dinosaurs, okay? Interesting. Some books available. We have a book list that you could probably pick up. If you want to order any of these books that we talk about, it's in there, right? Pick up one before you leave here tonight. Okay, so there's one. It's actually a documentary called Dragons or Dinosaurs. Guide the Dinosaurs. Actually showing the dinosaur-dragon connection. Okay. Anyhow. So I think right now, I'm not going to talk about human evolution, okay? I was going to, but I got too windy. Okay. And so to respect your time, I want to go ahead and open it up and give it over to Jonathan here. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Dave. So again, be sure to stop by the table over here. We got pamphlets. We got information on Dave and Mary Jo's ministry here, their websites. You can sign up for their newsletter. We got some Bibles here for you if you need a Bible. Anyways, but most of the literature is free, just don't take the tablecloth or the sign-up list, okay? Otherwise, you can take whatever else is on the table. So, anyways, this is your opportunity to ask these guys questions and about either the material you heard tonight or just something that you are thinking about regarding origins that you would just like to ask. So, Mary Jo, why don't you come on in? And I'm going to turn it over to you guys.
All right.
So, anybody got a question they want to ask?
While you're thinking about it, the point of this, about the whole thing is, how do you get a fossil? You bury it rapidly. What's a good mechanism to bury all these millions and millions of fossils around the world, over 1 billion of them now? They're all moving. I think most of them are found in what? Sedimentary layers, put down by water in mud. See mud? Think flood. Okay.
One of the things that really just disturbs me about this is the disingenuousness of a lot of the fossil records and the artwork that they develop to around just a tooth or something, and it's like that should disturb people. It should upset you that they put these in books and then they present it to you like this is a fact or this is how this animal looked, and the design that they came up with is genuinely is just artwork, and that should disturb us that is what's being pushed in our schools. That's very upsetting. I know as a pastor, if I was dishonest or if I was scandalous in some way, I mean, it would probably be plastered all over the papers. They'd come after me. Why are we not coming after these guys and these people for what they're doing? Because it's disingenuous and it's dishonest. It should upset you. It should make you a little upset, okay? Because this is being taught over and over again, and a lot of it is still in the textbooks, even though it's been disproven. And it's still being pushed on young people as well as people in general. And that should stir you and make you ask some questions. Even if you still believe in that evolutionary theory, you should be asking, well, why are we still teaching this if this is not true? Or how can we say this when we only have this little fragment of a bone? It should get you a little stirred up and make you think, well, is there a bigger agenda here? Because one thing's for sure, that is a lot of people that are going to be professors, they're denied the professor status if they don't embrace naturalism. You see, one of the things in life you have to always look at is follow the money. Where does the money go? It goes to naturalism and evolutionary theory. That's how everyone gets their grants. That's where the money goes right now. You see, and one thing I've learned in life is that when people deny the existence of God and don't follow their Creator and walk in relationship with the Creator God, being Jesus, is that there's 3 things men and women chase. And the 3 things they chase are sex, money, and power. Because all of us want pleasure and want happiness, right? And if we don't find our pleasure in God, we're going to try to find it in something. So I hope that this stirs some of you young people to rethink how you're living your life, why you're here, and what you're living it for. Because in the end, sex, money, and power is empty. It'll never satisfy you. In the end, my testimony, my experience, the only thing that's ever satisfied me is living in a relationship with the living God and the presence of God being with me and I with Him. And so anyways, I just really get frustrated when I watch this and I see this, like my daughter said, she knows these over and over again because she's been watching their talks since she was like 2 years old. Close to it, 20 years. I mean, she's 21.
She is, yeah.
But that just baffles me. And then we've been doing these talks for years, and it doesn't seem to upset people. But it does upset me because I believe in honesty, I believe in integrity, And that's a very important thing that, important characteristic that we should all have. We should all have integrity and honesty. And that's whether you're a Christian or not. Anyways, but
We had one of the guys on our staff, he was trained in geology, and for 20 years, he professed to be an atheist. And, he would argue with anybody that came to him about creation or God or the gospel or anything, and he'd argue with them, and finally, he had a friend who invited him to come to a creation versus evolution debate. And this guy said, well, my arguments for evolution are getting pretty weak. I think I'll go to the debate and learn some better updated arguments for evolution. Well, he came, and the first thing that happened, it wasn't a debate, it was one of our programs, and that made him kind of mad. And then secondly, his friend that invited him never showed up either. This guy had quite a temper back then, so he's sitting there in this big church listening to us, and kind of steam coming out his ears, I think. We talked about design. One of the things we talked about was the design of the woodpecker and the woodpecker's tub, which is a really cool storage system. And our friend Lanny, he went home and he said, how can I explain that from evolution? And it got him started thinking, and so then he began to question his beliefs in evolution. And after some time, he started researching all this evidence and became a very strong creationist. But he could not, after that, just what you're saying, he got so angry he could not go into a natural history museum without getting angry, because he knew that so much of what was being taught there was false.
Yeah.
And now we're not trying to induce anger, but what we would like to do is help you to say, hey, give me the other side, please. And we're very happy to engage with evolutionists if they will look at it and discuss with us the evidences. We're not there to brainwash somebody or force them against their will. And so what we want to do is just to put the information out there and let people think about it. And people who have a heart to learn are going to dig in and learn. And that's all, we're wanting people to just dig in. Take a look for yourself. So I want to know, do we have some questions tonight? It doesn't have to be on the fossils, it could be on anything else.
Yeah. Thank you so much once again for the interesting talk. I just wanted to find out, other than the talks that you're doing, what are the other initiatives that are aimed at debunking, the lies that because clearly the talks, in as much as they are good, they've got their place, but there's going to be other initiatives that you are doing to try and reach the same objectives. What are some of those other than the talks that you mentioned?
We tend to be more educators, so we're more in the interpretive line of taking the information and bringing it to people in general. But there are several large creation organizations which are doing very good research. And these are a lot of PhD scientists who were trained in secular universities primarily, but became convinced of creation model. And they do in-depth scientific research. Every few years there's it's called the International Conference on Creationism, and people will submit their papers and they're peer reviewed, and like any other scientific conference would be. And so that's one thing, is there is good scientific research, and we can point you to some of those organizations that do that kind of research. We personally do a lot of tours. We believe one of the best things we can do is get people out to actually look at this world and to just see the complexity and the beauty and the interrelationships, and just be in awe of what God, we believe God has made in this world. And so we do tours of Yellowstone National Park, Canyonlands and Arches and Grand Canyon and various other national parks. We have it's not a national park yet, it's not big enough, but it's called Colorado National Monument that's practically in our backyard in Grand Junction area. And gorgeous scenery. I think you'll see a couple slides
You'll
of that
see
tomorrow.
a few slides.
But take people out and actually look at the evidence. Because we can show you a picture, but once you can look at it and see it for yourself, it makes such a difference. So we'd encourage you, if you can do that, to participate in some of our tours. We're also doing training. So we're in the process of developing a one-year gap year program for students, primarily aimed at college-age students who would like to take a break from college, or for students coming out of high school and before they go to college to get a different view, to take some time. And that program, we have lots of field trips on that program, as well as hands-on kind of opportunities to do science and to actually interact with people. So we're doing that kind of thing. We're not technically organizationally connected, but we're connected with a lot of other creation organizations. There's a very good creation organization in Minneapolis. They meet once a month. It's called Twin Cities Creation Science Association. I think that's it. Anyway, yeah, if you're interested in that, not too far to drive up to the cities and take that in. It's like once a month. And they have some very good programs. There's also a group online that Logos Research Institute, for those of you that want or are more scientifically minded and you want deeper science than what we do. We're mostly speaking to general audiences.
Yeah.
But if you want the in-depth science, Logos is really good on that. Cornwall Alliance, I sent you a link to. They do a lot of good research in the area of environmental science and stewardship of the environment and so on. So there are, a lot of people. It's kind of a loose network of creationists that kind of work together. So I don't know if that's what you were asking.
Thank you. Okay.
Anybody else got a question?
There are some things we can get really technical on. I'd rather not. I like people's eyes to be open. Okay.
So any more questions here tonight? One of the things I think is fascinating, and I know Dave and Mary Jo know this, but when you start looking at the history of science,
Oh, yeah.
you see, and I've wanted them to, for years I've been telling them I want them to put together just kind of a timeline and go over the key figures that men and women that have developed certain disciplines in the sciences. For instance, like Andrew Murray, he discovered his discipline is oceanography, and that's studying the currents in the ocean and the pathways in the ocean. And how he actually discovered it was he was reading his Bible, and they talked about the pathways in the ocean. And so the Spirit of God spoke to him to go and study the ocean. And so he went and studied the currents. And that's how that whole scientific discipline developed. And if you go over the history of the key people who developed most of the scientific disciplines that we have today, they were people who had a biblical worldview. You see, and so evolution is really, the theory is the new kid on the block. It's only been around for about almost 200 years here, in a sense of being really, probably in the last 100 years, really pushed hard. But studying these different disciplines, is like even the scientific method of experimentation and observation, that was developed by a man who believed in God and Christian thought as well. And so it's just fascinating what's left out in the conversation. So when you talk about these scientists, they don't tell you their actual history, their bias, and how they came up with their discoveries. And so anyway, maybe you could touch on that a little bit more. I'm kind of a loose cannon on the deck of a ship, you know.
Yeah, well, we personally know a lot of scientists who are doing research now, currently, that is based on the biblical, what you read in the Bible, and looking at the actual science and seeing how does it actually fit together.
And amazingly, it does.
Baumgartner tomorrow, I think you'll mention probably John Baumgartner.
We should
He
mention
was,
that.
he was put forward as the leading geophysicist in the world, and until they found out he was a creationist. And then they didn't want to give him that credit anymore. There's been so many people that have, if they came, it's kind of like coming out as a creationist is pretty dangerous in some universities.
Yeah.
Because you may end up losing your position.
Happened to me.
Yeah, it happened to Dave.
Okay.
And he didn't teach creation in the classroom, but the university didn't like the fact he was teaching creation outside of the classroom on his own time. And in one, and in one statistics class, for about less than 5 minutes, he presented what he did last night on the statistical improbability of the origin of life.
Of only one protein.
Of one protein, yeah, not even the origin of life,
Yeah.
there's one protein. And he made the mistake of saying at the end of his presentation there, I don't know what they teach you in the biology class about this kind of probability, but in statistics, we call it zero. And
5 minutes
within
later, I
5
hear from
minutes-
the department chairman.
Yeah, the department chairman said, I hear you're preaching religion in the classroom. He didn't mention God. He didn't mention creation.
Yeah.
He only put forward a statistical argument against the evolution of one protein. And yet, they were looking for a way.
Oh, yeah.
And they came over soon, not too long after that and said, it's probably fair to warn you, your position won't be renewed. Now, he was not tenured, so they could do
I
that.
can do that.
But, that's, Dave likes to say, that's why I can do what I'm doing now, travel all
That's
around
right.
teaching people about creation, showing
Yeah,
problems.
that's it.
But there is a bias, and, I wish in the public school systems and so on, that you would be able to freely discuss the pros and cons of evolution and offer alternative views to students. I really wish so, but it's not there now.
That would be actually critical thinking, okay, and we can't allow that at a place of higher
No,
education.
we can't do that.
So it really does come down to, you gotta have a burning desire to seek for truth yourself.
Yeah.
And if you have that burning desire to know truth and really to dig in and look for it, I believe you're gonna find the truth
That's right.
when you look for it.
Well, great. Well, we won't drag it on here anymore. We got one more talk tomorrow night. We'll be looking at geology. Who's the hero of the plot? Time, water, or catastrophe?
I hope you come tomorrow. That's one of my favorite talks, and it's amazing when you start seeing the evidence
Same time,
all over
same
the world that there really was a flood.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's a great one. Well, awesome. Well, thanks again,
Thank
Dave,
you.
Mary Jo, for coming.
Hey, don't forget.